Welcome to GausRoth Tutorials. I'm GausRoth, and today we're going to look at variables. Okay, let's go into build mode. I currently have a script named variables tutorial and a trigger with the script attached to it. There's currently nothing on the script. However, we're going to make one of each variable. We'll go through them one at a time. The nice thing about variables is it allows us to store values or cache them for use at a later time, so we can use them multiple times, and it's a lot quicker than using a input value and setting it multiple times. So let's go to variables. We're going to create a number variable. I'm just going to call it num for now. We can also turn it into a list. I have created a video on lists in the past, so I will link that in the description. Number variables can be used for many different things. They can be used to store the values from basic math operations to more advanced operations. They can be used as a counter, a timer. Now there's a couple ways that we can set a number value. We can set it directly in here. Say we can set it to, let's get rid of the 0, 1, 2, 3. We can also make a unique version of this on our trigger. So go to number, we can change this to 4, 5, 6. Now if I were to make a copy of this trigger, we can also set it to something else for this trigger. Notice it says 4, 5, 6 because we copied it. However, if we were to clear this, it'll take the value that we entered in the script. So this allows us to have multiple scripts on multiple objects with different initial values. So we can make this 7, 8, 9. And now that trigger is 4, 5, 6. That trigger is 7, 8, 9. Another way that we can set a number value is by going to values, grab our set to, drag in our number variable, and then go back to values, scroll down, and grab a number input. Now on world start, this will change to, say, 12, 12. And then if we throw in a debug, we can put one in front, we can throw a number in both. Now when we start the world, I'm going to clear that, and if I reset it, notice how we have 4 prints. So this script is debugging the initial starting value and then the 12, 12 that we're setting it to. However, it's doing it on both, and we have 7, 8, 9 on that one, so 7, 8, 9, 12, 12. So now both of them are 12, 12. Number variables can be an integer or a float. So if I put in a decimal in the middle here, it will print out 121.2. So if I reset it quick, and we have 121.2. However, number variables do lose precision if they have more than 7 characters in them. So let's delete this, and I'll put in 9,999,999, and I'll hit enter. So if I clear it and reset it, we show that we have that 9,999,999. However, if I were to add one to it, so let's go set number to number plus 1. So this will increase it by 1. This will go to and add a debug. So if I clear it and reset it, we have 10 million. Now if I do this again, clear, we're going to see that we're printing out 10 million twice. So it's actually losing its precision right there at 10 million. Now I could add, like, say, instead of adding 1, I could add 101 or 110. And if I clear it and reset it, I mean, I do get the 110, but if I add, say, a 5 and reset it, it rounds it. The next variable is the Boolean. We're just going to call this bool. Booleans are used for logical expressions, so like if something is true, if something is false, we can use a Boolean to determine that. We can also check to see if this particular Boolean is true, and how we set them or change them in the code. We go to set, we can grab our Boolean, then we can go to values, Boolean input, and it currently on start it's setting it to false. So before any of this runs, it is set to false. We can also change it here, so this one could be false, this one could be true. We will change our debug to our Boolean, and we'll set this one to true. So now when we clear it and reset it, it's going to print false and it's going to print true 3 times. We can also toggle it so that it automatically goes to the opposite of what it is. So we can set Boolean to not itself. So we can go to operators, grab a not, and then we can just go not bool. So what that'll do is it'll set it to the opposite. So here we are, false, true, true, false. Next on the list is object variables. We're just going to call this obj. Object variables can be set to anything that has an object panel. So basically, it can be set to a trigger. That could be set to any of these shapes, any of these gizmos, any of these sounds. It could be set to an asset. Say, can't be set to these assets, but once I pull it into the world, I can set this as an object variable. That's the same thing with the objects in the asset library. And how we set that is, so like we have our object, it is set to empty. Let's just grab a gizmo here. We'll grab a text gizmo, and we're going to open up the object panel. And then in our trigger, and then we just drag this blue pill into this empty. So now our object is set to a text gizmo. Once we have an object cached, there's a lot of things we can do to it. There are operators that under object transform that allow us to get information from that object. We go to actions. There are some actions that we can do to an object. Go to motion. We can move it, rotate it, scale it. And then there are some events that will run based on what object the script is attached to. The next variable will be the player variable. I'm just going to name it P for now. Now the player variable, if we look at our trigger now, notice it does not show up. We cannot set the object this way, and we can't set it in here. The only way we can set a player variable is we got to go to events, and there's a couple events that allow us to interact with the player. So like when colliding with a player, or when trigger is entered or exited by a player, when the player enters the world, when a projectile hits the player, when an object is grabbed by the player, when an object is attached to a player. These are all different ways to get the player variable, and all we have to do is go to set. So when trigger is entered, because this is a trigger, we're going to set P to player. So now we have access to this player, and there's a bunch of things we can do once we have the player variable. Under operators, we can go to player. We can get all this information from the player. And if we go to actions and scroll all the way down, we can show pop-ups to the player, and we can set achievements, and then ownership of the player. We go to motion, we can respawn, move, add physical velocity. So for instance, if I debug, print, and I go to operators, I can get the name of the player and then just put in P. And then if I clear this, reset, it's going to print our booleans. And then if I walk through the trigger that's right in front of me, it should print out my name. Our next variable will be the vector. I'm just going to name this vec quick. It takes in 3 inputs, so we have our x-axis, our y-axis, and our z-axis, and we can use this to get the object starting position, so we can use it later. So we could go set vec to go up to object, position of object, and then we can grab value input of self. So this will set our vector to the position of our trigger. So if I just reset that quick, and then it'll give us 0, 0, 0, and then it'll give us our positions. You could also set a vector this way and hand type them in with a vector input. You can, if we open up the object panel, you can give it unique starting values per object. There, so if I wanted this one to start with a 1 on the X, this one to start with a 1 on the Y. And we can also go to operators, scroll down to vector math, grab new vector from X, Y, Z, and then we can add in number input in each. Our next variable will be rotation. I'm just going to call it ROT for short. Similar to the vector, we get 3 inputs. We have the pitch, yaw, and roll. We open up our object panel, go to attributes. This is the rotation, so pitch, yaw, and roll. And just like the vector, we can set the rotation to the starting rotation of an object. So if we go up and get the rotation of object and put in self, and then debug, hit reset, and now we have 0, 0, 0, and then 0, 180, 0. We can adjust them manually in here, or we can give them unique values in the actual object panel. We can also go to operators, vector math, and give it a new rotation from X, Y, Z, just like vectors. The only difference is if I were to throw in something higher than 361 in here and then try to print it, it will print out a 1. So our range for individual rotation axes is 0 through 360. If you do go below 0, it will turn it into a positive number and then subtract 360 to it. Just like if we're going over 360, it'll just take that number, subtract 360. So our next variable is a color, and then I'll just call it coal for now. That's fine. So colors take in 3 inputs. They range from 0 to 1, and it's the RGB value, so red, green, blue. So if I change 0, 0, 0 is black, and I change the first one to 1, we get red. If I change the first and the second one to 1, we get yellow, and all of them to 1, we get white. And then you can give it a decimal, say like 0.5, and then you can adjust the colors like that. You can also set, so grab our set color, and then we're going to go to operator, scroll down to color, get color of object, throw in self, and now if we print out color, clear it, reset it, we're going to get the initial value, which we set was 0.5, 1.5, and then it'll print out 0, 0, 0 because it's a trigger and triggers don't have color. Now if we were to put that on a cube, so let's say we grab this cube here and then we attach the script to it and then hit reset. Here's our trigger, and then our cube is going to get a 0.929, 922, 925. After color, we're going to go over string variable. Just call this str. And a string is basically a list of characters, and the range is 1,000, so you can't go over 1,000 characters. We can set the string variable in here, so we can go A, B, C. Or we can go into our trigger, close it, and reopen it so it shows up. And we can also put in number characters. And we can set our string to a different variable on start. So we'll just set string to value, string input, and we can go, I don't know, A, B, C, D, E, F. And then if we, then if we add string to our prints, clear it, reset it, and now we'll have ABC 1, 2, 3, ABCDEF. These are all the different combos that we have between all the different objects. We can actually get rid of this now. However, I want to use our text box that we have here. I'm just going to And what I'm going to do is we have our name of our player, so we're going to drag this down here and get rid of these debugs, and I'm going to set string to name of player. And then we're going to go to actions, scroll to text, display text on our object, which is the text box, and we'll just display string on object. So when we clear it and reset it, and then we walk through the trigger, our name will pop up on this text box. We could do something like display string, then we're going to add another plus to add a space. Come on. And then we'll add, go to values, scroll down, get a string input, and just for a space in here. So we'll just give it a tab or something, give it some room, and then we'll typecast as a string, and then the player. And the player will return a number value. It's basically the player's index in the world. So if I reset it now, go in, now it's going to say GausRoth 2. Our last variable is an asset variable, and these are a little different. We can't set them to anything through script. We get a, close this, open it back up. We do get an empty slot just like we did with object. However, we can't put an object variable in that. What we have to do is we got to go to build, go to our assets, click on this eye, and we have this blue pill here. We have to click and drag that in there, and that's how we set asset variables. And the only thing that we can do with an asset variable is spawn it in. So if we go to action, scroll down to spawning, grab spawn asset, and then I can spawn asset to, let's go position of our text box so we can actually see it. So we'll go to operators, go down to object, transform, position of our text box, which is object, and all that's fine. And then I'll just reset it quick. And now when I walk through this trigger, displays my name and spawns in the cube. That's all we have for our standard variables. However, there are player persistent variables. So if I go to, yes, I mean, yes it was. I don't know why I got this error, but it clearly has an asset which is linked to an asset and spawn. So I'm not sure why I got that error. Now if I clear that, so if I go to systems and then click on player variables, I have this create a player variable, and I can create one. They're always going to be a number, and I can hit save, and now I can set this PPV. So when triggers entered by player, I can go to values, I can set player persistent variable, call PPV for player. I need a player variable to do this, and I'm going to set that to 1. Currently, if I debug before this, I can get the player's persistent variable, and it'll be 0. If I set it to 1, add the print after, go to my console and hit reset. Now when I go through the trigger, it pops up, spawns in our cube, and now it says our variable is 0, and now it's 1. The nice thing about PPVs is they're persistent. That means I can leave the world and come back, and whatever this variable was set to when I left, it will be that when I come back. All of these other variables, when the world instance closes, they all get set back to whatever it is set on start. And that is all I have for variables. We went over all the different types of variables. We didn't go over lists, but I do have a video already on lists, which I will link in the description. We went over numbers, booleans, objects, players, vectors, rotation, color, string, and asset. If you have any questions, comments, concerns about the video, or have any suggestions for future videos, please let me know in the comment section below. Also, if you learned something or liked the video, please hit that like button, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you are notified of my future videos. I am trying to release a video once a week. Trying for Monday. I already messed that up today. But yeah, thanks for watching and have a good one.